Well, good afternoon, everybody. I want to welcome you to our session today, which is called Radix, NCB, and the Current Moment. I thought as a way to start, I'd like to just share this little visual here. This is a picture of the Right-On staff. I got this. This was a gift from Bill Squires. I think many of you know him. But it's just a way for me to acknowledge that there is just amazing, rich history in this room. Now, I was around in Berkeley in the 80s. I actually lived for 1 year in the Dwight House, not as an NCB person, but as a InterVarsity Christian Fellowship staff looking for a cheap place to live. My only other connection to NCB back then was taking Virginia Hearn's journal keeping workshop. I did that back in the day. I know many of you have as well. And just, I think, because of ministry in Berkeley, just having some connection, I knew people like Mary and Gary Gates, who was with InterVarsity, and they served with, so I was with them there, but I know they're also a part of the Christian World Liberation Front. I went to a lot of meetings with David, and I know that Bernard did, and he was very, very much involved. And so I have little brushes with all of your rich history here in Berkeley. So I stand here humbly knowing that a lot of what we're doing now is so much on the shoulders of so much of work that you all have done. I spent a few hours just hanging out with Bill, Bill and Kathy Squires, and they just went on and on and on and on about a very fruitful time back in those days. In a lot of ways, we stand here hoping and praying so that some of that energy can be revived, and working hard on what that looks like. One thing I also wanted to say too is that we're going to be having a conversation today, and just to very much punctuate the fact that it is a ongoing conversation, and so it's not like we've buttoned anything up. And this bringing together of Radix and New College is still very much in process. There's still some I's being dotted and T's being crossed, but the decision and the intent and the desire and the excitement is there for what it can mean that we formally join forces together and engage the current moment together. So that's what our topic is going to be today. And so it's going to be a conversation between the three of us here, but I have asked Sister Marilyn McEntyre if she would be able to begin by framing our time, and then she will be like a participant moderator. So we're going to try this mode today. That's also kind of fun. So, but anyway, I just, again, from the bottom of my heart, just want to thank you so much. And I think it'll probably come up in our conversation, but some of you know that a contingent of us was the Radix editorial board, and then a couple other friends. We had a chance to spend time with Sharon Gallagher this past week, and it was extremely powerful and precious. And the Lord was so good because she was actually quite alert and responsive and chimed in on things, and it was just a lovely time. So anyway, we were gathered around a legend. Susan Phillips was there, and just to see the two of them sitting together, arm in arm, was just this, that was worth the price of admission alone. So anyway, without further ado, I'd like to ask Marilyn to.
Are these on?
They are.
Yeah, great. I was good at the mics working. It's such a pleasure to be here. And before I start participant moderating, as Craig puts it, I want to ask Matthew to introduce himself too to any of you who don't already know him, because he's such an important piece of this particular gathering. So please just introduce yourself.
I have the very big shoes to fill of Sharon, but along with many wise people, some of I've met, and being able to see you is lovely. So I'm the editor of Radix.
Okay, so I think that when Craig asked me if I would help to frame the conversation, we don't have that long, and It's great to have a lot of people in the same room who have some interest in this. I think that one place to start is with the why question. There are so many avenues of communication out there now. There are Substacks, and there are blogs, and there are magazines, print magazines, and online magazines, and YouTube, and podcasts, and so on. So it's really important, I think, anytime you start or revive an enterprise like this, to say, okay, why this? Why now? Why here? Whom does it serve? And in what form is it most valuable to those it serves? What conversation can happen here that might not be happening elsewhere? How is Radix not Christian Century or Comment or Prism or Conversations or any of the other many faith-oriented or Christian publications out there? And so I think I'd like to kind of open up with the why question. As a reader or as a contributor, or as someone who just wants to foster public conversation within the community of faith, what would you hope for from this ongoing endeavor? And I'm just assuming you two will chime in anytime you want to
start?
weigh in on this.
In an earlier discussion, you were talking about the importance of having a connection of time. And so sometimes we can suffer from a present consciousness. And one of the things that I really, really value about Radix is the connection to the past. So we have these strong Berkeley roots, and we have these trusted individuals, and there's a whole bunch of names. They're not public to mind right now, but you have the Schumachers and the Beekners, and Sharon did a beautiful job with the interviews, and people who appreciate at a certain time, but also going back to the mothers and the fathers of the church, the appreciation of the church roots that go deeper, the Abbas and the Ammas, and what that means in terms of our culture is built on a plurality of things, but we don't want to, and I really appreciated that point, we don't want to have this just a present-minded consciousness, because Christianity is about more than that. And so that's something to me that Radix has always spoken to. We had Tim over here talking about he liked the paper edition, and to hear that, as an editor's, another Radix reader, that's great. But also having a diversity, that it's not just one particular voice. Radix has always had a plurality of voices, and for me, that is something that is a really, really lovely, beautiful thing. That was.
Craig, you want to address it?
Yeah, and maybe I'll just share personally. I just recently finished my doctorate in the sacred art of writing, and I had the immense privilege of having Marilyn as my cohort leader in that program. But it was the doctorate in the sacred art of writing is part of the Eugene Peterson Center for the Christian Imagination of Western Theological Seminary in Holland, Michigan. That's a real mouthful, but I wanted to share that just because it was just I feel like I had been through. So I'm 62, just to share with you my age, and have been in ministry for a good 45, 50 years, and had been wrestling with a lot of different things that were at the intersection of theology and life experience and history and politics. And so this was a chance for me to really bring those different things together. And I really had as my target audience my 4 Gen Z kids. Like I really wanted them to be able to hear, what shaped Dad? Why did he do the silly things he did? And why did he yap forever at the dinner table about this and that and the other? And so just a way to kind of, to reflect back on my ministry experiences, I think particularly about my journey through, the events of 9/11 and pondering why the church was so innocuous in those days, and just was responded to the events of 9/11 either flat-footed or having its head in the sand, or just not having a prophetic bone in its body. For the most part, there were pockets, right? And so just being able to sort of reflect on some of those things and some of the ministries that led out to for me. And so when I think about Marilyn's question, I just think about that we, to be able to give concrete avenues and pathways for folks to do that kind of reflection, that kind of writing, to be able to gather and curate and publish that kind of writing. I just think that it's an important time, for us to be doing that kind of reflection in a way that can be shared and can inspire in a time of great change and uncertainty.
Thank you. So I'm going to summarize as we go along, and I would love if some self-appointed secretary out there would take just bullet point notes on people's responses to this question, because I know we're recording, but it's nice to have a list. I really like lists. So one answer to the why question that Matthew gave is that it's a place where we can together recall the long history, the deep roots of what we hold, what we treasure in common, which is our faith. And it's also a place where we can bring it into the present and make those connections between present and past. And then Craig added to that it's a place where we can share our personal histories, our spiritual journeys, the ways in which we have been shaped in our generations by the church and witnessed particular kinds of changes and responded to them. So it's a locus for that conversation. And in being in print or even online, it's a place where, because it's not an in-person gathering, people are invited to ponder and reflect on these things before we reconvene in any groups we are part of. And I want to ask Jackie, who offered to say something from her generation about why she thinks Radix is an important piece of this enterprise. And also, if you speak in the course of all this, please just say your name first, because I think you all think we all know each other, but some of us don't. So, yeah, Jackie.
While she's coming up, I'll give just a little background. So we met Jackie through InterVarsity at San Francisco State University, where she's a student, and so she was one that got to enjoy some of our early experiments in the Marilyn McEntyre Gen Z writing workshop. So that's the context, and since then, Jackie's just been coming to so many things, and we're really grateful for the company that she has been providing us. So.
Hey everyone, I'm Jackie, and as Craig has said, I've gone to quite a few of Marilyn McEntyre's writing workshops and writing retreats, and after every single one, I would say the overarching theme that I took away was the power of words, and I really internalized that. And it completely transformed the way that I consume media, that I read books, and the way that I write and communicate with people as well. I see how the word choices that we use and the way that we arrange our words, it has a lot of meaning and a lot of power, and all of this can really transform the meaning of our sentences and communicate different things to people. And so basically through these workshops I have really I've really come to a deeper understanding of the importance of these words, and have actually started making lists of words which she has suggested, and creating a new vocabulary that I use. And one of the words that is on my list is decolonization, and the meaning historically and in the meaning in the context of my own generation as well, and how words can have different meanings depending on the context and the way that you use it, which is true in technical English writing, but also true in culture as well. So I really, really benefited from these workshops, and I just wanted to leave it at that. Sorry, I'm not a great public speaker, but I think the overall message that I want to bring is that you would be walking into a space where you can really learn and grow in the aspects of writing and aspects of communication and even reading as well. So it was nice talking to you.
I think you can just continue speaking in public, Jackie. That's fine. Yeah. So one of the things to add to the list of responses to the why Radix question would be that this is a place where we develop our own idiom. Every publication really has, and every publisher has a certain kind of in-house culture, words that get normalized, notions that get normalized. I think of Sojourners and the way Jim Wallace has really put his stamp on Sojourners magazine over the years. I think about the budget as a moral document and how what press that got, or Jesus is neither Republican nor Democrat. But just sort of putting little, not just slogans, but normalizing a certain kind of naming what's happening. And if you read the Christian Century, it's got its own culture, and there are certain kinds of topics and language that century readers over time acclimate to and understand that this is one of the kinds of conversations the church generates. And so I would hope from a magazine like Radix that the conversation would be self-conscious in the sense that it would include some meta-conversation. How do we talk about the things we talk about? What words have become particularly important? Decolonize is a really important one. And Craig wrote his D-Min thesis on the church in an age of empire. Empire and imperialism are words not to be afraid of. And so is this a place where political language and traditionally theological language can intersect in new, interesting ways? Is this a place where, Matthew, you use the terms amas and abbas, right, reaching into the ancient world for some terms to bring forward? Is this a place where some antique language can be brought back into usage? Is this a place where we can help each other learn to read by, say, book reviewing? You know, here's a book that's interesting, and here's why, and here's what I would hope, if I shared it with you, that you get out of it. So I want to open this up and ask you, this is your chance to contribute to a common wish list. If this is to be a vehicle that is useful and elevating and helpful and heartening for all of us, what do you want from it? Is that a good, fair question? Hope you're taking mental notes. Yeah.
I don't know if you want this kind of answer, but...
And please introduce yourself to everybody.
Sorry. Yes, my name is Kit, and I used to work with Write On and Radix as the art director for a couple of years. And so I'm a visual artist, and one thing that I'm just thinking about as you're talking about book and book reviews is that we never had, as far as I remember, any reviews of visual arts. And the visual arts are very much of a commentary on our culture, and it would be fun to have some of that, and it would inject some visuals, more visuals into the magazine.
Thank you for that. Did you all hear that? Yeah. Matthew, do you want to say anything about that, about the challenge of including visual material, visual arts?
I would be tempted to ask our very lovely Mr. Ed, who does the images. We want very much to include more of that. There are some site limitations that we are looking to overcome. We are looking for some increased budget for that, but that is something we very much do want to include, because the visual is something that also helps people foster in general, to foster a sense of well-being, of flourishing. So we do very much want to include that. And we have some, and I think we're very much open, Ed's nodding his head, to more.
Yeah, and I think Image, is this on?
Yes.
Image Magazine does a lot of that, and I think that we don't have to compete with other groups, but to look at how they do that and how others integrate the different disciplines. You know, you're suggesting that we include visual arts makes me also think, yeah, and what if we brought in, you know, some word from the sciences? People, you've certainly had these conversations about AI, for instance, but just a little word from people who are at work in scientific areas where lay people deserve to know something and maybe can help condense it for us and look at how it's a matter of reflecting from a vantage point of our faith commitment.
Can I say something?
Yeah, please.
I'll make this short. My Gen Z daughter basically says, Dad, if you don't include art, your ministry is dead. so I'm very motivated just at that level alone. I mean, I'm recognizing that, you know, I'm so much more in my head, and so I think that there is, I'm grateful that I'm being surrounded by folks like you all. You know, we had a wonderful time at Red Bluff, and we had a chance to have some brainstorming meetings for Radix, and Keith Chris was part of that, and we passed around these pictures of Larry Hatfield's giant bird art that he had in the sanctuary, and just appreciating that there has been a legacy of visual art in the family. And so, anyway, that's just to say that I'm very committed to it. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Yes. Please introduce yourself first.
Hello. Hi, I'm Keith Chris. I go back to when Ride On was actually produced in the catacombs of Berkeley. You know, that's what we call the basement of Dwight House, which was where Kit, myself, and many others spent many long hours doing layout, you know, the old stuff, you know, with Larry, hot wax, glue, all kinds of terrible toxic materials. But what Kit brought up as far as visuals, I think that Right On, well, and then when it became Radix, and when I art directed, I made it a concerted effort to bring in illustration that spoke, that brought the reader in, but also that would stand on its own. And some of those actually, I think, got some recognition out there in the big world. But I would love to see that, you know, as things grow here, to be re-included. And I was basically gifted by having friends who would do work for lunch. Hey, I need an artwork, you know, Hawaiian lunch. So I was able to, you know, some of the great local artisans that are here in both the First Res and elsewhere, including some of my one of my professors at CCAC, where I was attending as a student, contributed fabulous, amazing work, and which hopefully one day I'll be able to want to get a show at West Lawn sometime in retrospective of the work of Radix Right On and all that stuff. So I'm hoping that, yes, it can be reinvigorated for the future, and also go further and include video and all, you know, and of course photography has always been part of it. Really push it, you know, make this a publication that stands out, you know. Ed was talking at this get together the other day. Go back to print too. You know, put it in the budget. See what it would be to have something that maybe is a little oversized or whatever, that could go on your coffee table. That people will say, wow, what is this? This looks fascinating. You know, it's paper. I don't have to turn it on, or hook up to the internet to read it. It's immediate. So anyway, those are just some of the things that have been growing in my mind. And it's a reason. Thank you very much.
That's really helpful to have that historical perspective. And we were just talking at lunch a little bit about, since publishers do books on demand now, how hard would it be for a magazine to do print on demand? And it's costly. Another model would be to put out a print issue once a year or something that would be a compilation of the best of the online material, something like that. But I think to explore ways of making it an artifact that has some value and that can be passed around in real time among real people is to go on the wish list. Other thoughts, Ed?
Yeah, I'm Ed House, and I've been helping out with Radix for a while, with layout, editing, copy editing, poetry editor, so on. But I think my history with Radix goes all the way back to high school, and what really drew me in was I found people, writers, who took their faith very seriously and also took culture very seriously. And that's what I would like to see continue, is I think you need both of those. And I would also love to see it in some form in print down the road. It wouldn't be that difficult. It's just a matter of resources and finding the right people to do it and finding the funding for it. But that's our main roadblock to that. But yeah.
So, Ed, culture is a big word. Could you just say a little bit more about how you think about faith and culture?
I think about it in terms of
when you're in high school, for example.
well, when I was in high school, I found it fascinating that there were a group of Christians who take their faith seriously and watched movies and listened to music and went to dance performances and looked at culture more as the arts, or focused on that. But now I also see it expanded into political life and what is our Western culture? And also we're becoming a nation where other cultures are being very recognized as well. So, what does it mean to take your faith seriously and also take indigenous people's culture seriously? To take Black culture seriously, and so on. Those are great areas to explore.
That's really helpful. Yeah, I think that a question that is worth revisiting repeatedly in a group like this is, what does it mean to be authentically intercultural as Christians, and also interdisciplinary? Because the disciplinary system has kind of siloed what we know, and I think that if the church is calling us together, it's calling us to kind of help each other across disciplinary boundaries as well as cultural boundaries. Yeah, if either of you want to weigh in here, you're standing up here, I'm just moderating, but I'm kind of looking to all of you to see if you have more you want to contribute here.
Hi, I'm Wayman Yee. I'm on the board of Radix. One issue that I think a lot about is how do we actually make this endeavor more intergenerational. I've been part of Radix for a long time, where I was the youngest person around, and people who were older than would say, oh yeah, we have young people going to me. And I say, I'm not that young. So
Now you can point to
I'm
Jackie.
thinking a lot about that issue.
Yeah. So another interword, So yeah, there's this issue of how do we build bridges and speak across what appear to be boundaries, and in some ways dissolve those boundaries, or at least if not, then honor them by crossing them frequently, generously, imaginatively, so that this business of translating for each other into new terms is an ongoing matter. It has been I used to teach a adult ed course in various churches for a while called Talking the Talk, and it was about how different denominations and even different congregations tend to develop their own version of in-speak, and it becomes kind of a club handshake that we talk about Jesus in certain ways, or we reference a certain person of the Trinity, or there are things we don't say, or there are things we always say, or we know how to do greetings. I mean, it can get really clubby. And so paying attention to what is the conversation that we create together, and what are the words that really become anchors, the words that become important to us. For theologians, it might be a word like Trinitarian. And for a person worshiping liturgically for the first time, the word liturgy becomes really important, exploring what that is. But just paying attention to what conversation do I need to be in right now? And how can I come to a vehicle like Radix to look at the larger conversation that I, in fact, want to be and am a part of? You want to say anything more about that? I'm just saying this because you guys are up here. You might as well be useful.
Go for it, Matthew. Why don't you share a little bit about?
Well, yeah. There's another comment.
I'm Larry Hatfield. I work with Keith on the layout of rubber cement and all that early technology. One of the things that I've wanted to see for a long time is, this is more on the history side, I guess. There's a sort of a rich reservoir of interviews done by Sharon Gallagher and others associated with Radix and right on. Everybody from I think Huey Newton to Malcolm Muggeridge and others, the Berrigan brothers and all these people. And the Times, somebody could do, an ambitious writer could, a writer wants a challenge anyway, could take a bit of history and then have the interviews and a little history of the interviews and setting context for that. But it seems like there's a wealth of value there that needs to be published somehow.
Amen.
Yes. Thank you for that.
I don't know how to do it. I'm not a writer or anything.
We're in the works.
Okay.
They're forthcoming. Because you're totally right. There is a great amount of wonderful information, and also information that is, some things are timely, so it will include dates and times and specific maybe election cycles, but then there's other things that talk about timeless matters. And so, for instance, I'm thinking something Lucy Shaw, who did, I think, a number of times, and your connection as well, with Madeline Langle. These are timeless things. Lucy Shaw is talking about the importance of friendship. We had Jim Houston from Regent talking about the importance of friendship. People who talk about community. And these are timeless issues that don't go away. And I think that's why we love people like, to throw around a name that has typical parlance, someone like C.S. Lewis. We all know and appreciate that. And I would dare say your work on words, because it's timeless. And that's really important. So yes, the interviews, we're getting them up.
Another thing about interviews is it makes it personal. It's not just information, right? It's who's out there. And there's a who question as well as a why question. Who are my people? And how do I expand the understanding of my people if I don't know who's out there? And so I think ordinary people interviewing ordinary people is pretty interesting too. They don't all have to be celebrities. But I've taught courses in memoir and autobiography and biography and all that. And I think one of the reasons people want other people's stories is because we don't get any rehearsal for being here, and we all want to know how other people do this. And so this is a place to offer something and help and take it personally. So yeah, personal stories are irreplaceable. Keith?
Yeah, years ago, poetry rejection editor Walt Hearn wrote a piece on dumpster diving, which actually got a lot of traction. It influenced people across the country, getting responses, and started a new thing.
That's great.
Oh, dumpster diving. Okay, in a nutshell, you go and find food that was rather recently distributed from a large store like Safeway into the dumpsters on the side, and you go and resource this back. You go and harvest it and then distribute it to those that are in need. Bread, cheese, whatever is not too moldy, and it's doable stuff. So Walt made a real art out of that stuff. Community work.
As a topic, what that makes me think is that who's going to think of a topic like that except the one person who thinks of a topic like that? One of the periodicals I write for on occasion is the Reform Journal, which is another really interesting model to look at. It's online now, and it comes out of the Midwest, and it's put out by the Christian Reformed Church, mostly I think from RCA people, Reformed Church of America, and the CRC and the RCA are really having a hard time right now. But they have a big group of contributors, and they have a pretty wide open invitation to people to do occasional blogs and so on. So that their journal has become a repository for incidental conversations that come up within the church by readers. And so I think it's really important to have a dedicated editorial board and group of people who do the hard work. And then beyond that, a circle of people who are regular contributors. But beyond that, this is, if it's everybody's vehicle, I think that we may have professionalized magazines a little bit too much. Magazines can really be gathering places where we meet in a particular kind of conversation that's not in person and it's not online, and it has its place. So, yeah, Matthew, you were going to say something else a minute ago.
I don't know if it's directly connected. It's about words.
You don't have to connect. Go ahead.
Dumpster diving. So we think of certain words being important at certain times or not being important. And so I was thinking last night a little bit about, and this is the question that we've been thinking about, why in a culture of an overabundance of words, whether it's TikTok or Facebook or YouTube, we can visual things, there's piles of things to read. And so I'm thinking to myself last night, I was in Phillips looking at a nice view, and I was thinking, okay, so why? Why more? And I got tired of thinking about it, and so I thought I'm gonna write some cards. And so typically what I do when I'm gonna write a card, I look at a quote book. Now I drove here, so I don't have my quote books with me, and so I had to flip through a PDF. And so you typically look at words like generosity and kindness. And I looked at generosity, and then I looked at kindness, but on the way to kindness came the word kisses. And I had a little bit of wine, and it's 10 o'clock at night, and I think to myself, well, who's gonna overlook kisses? Now forgive me, I'm going to read you two of them. There's a purpose for this. These are the quotes. There is the kiss of welcome and of parting, the long, lingering, loving, present one, the stolen or the mutual one, the kiss of love, of joy and of sorrow, the seal of promise and the receipt of fulfillment. Or, and with a velvet lip print on his brow, such language as the tongue hath never spoken. I wasn't thinking about anything else. And that was the answer. The answer was words, even if there's lots of them, if they're delivered in an imaginative and creative way, they're always powerful. And so, in thinking about words within Christianity, we have beautiful words, beautiful, wonderful words, hospitality, and justice, and mercy, and forgiveness. And we use these words a lot, but they're still meaningful. And so like kisses, there's always room, if we're creative in using our language, that we can incite people to Christian things. So I was reinvigorated. I was incited towards, there is a purpose, even though there's lots of words out there. We, New College of Berkeley, Radix has this history. We have things to say, and they're worthy of being said. And that's all I have to say about that.
Craig, do you want to add to that?
If I could just call your attention to a word that's really important to us. So if you see at the bottom, you all have this booklet. I want you to be sure to take this home. It's yours to keep, hot off the press. But across the bottom is our new mission statement, basically, which is discerning gospel faithfulness together in the San Francisco Bay Area. Now, the word together can seem kind of a throwaway word, but it's not. It's actually, in some ways, like central to our mission, which is that we really want to discern gospel faithfulness together, like we need each other. One of the things that, so last year we had a little gathering of the Radix board, editorial board, and bless her heart, Susan Fetcher was still with us at that time. I remember Susan and I think Mary Ann just talking about how Radix really was. It served as almost like a journal of a community. Like you have people traveling together. Like think about Berkeley, Bay Area and Berkeley, people traveling together, and this was a way to kind of record how they thought about things over time. Is that right? Is that kind of how we talked about it? And that really caught my attention because that's a huge part of why I am so excited about the two coming together because Radix can really can continue to serve as this journal. Not just a journal of disparate ideas, individuals, isolated from one another, but it really is the reflections of a community traveling together. Is the issue coming out? Very shortly. Very shortly. So the next issue of Radix is coming out very shortly.
And people can sign up for the mailing list if they want to learn more about it so they can get it fresh off the press as soon as it's out.
Yeah, and now maybe we can assume that you would all want to receive it. We can put you on there. I don't know if that's, you can come to us and say, no, we don't want to be on there. But we could put you on there so you make sure you're receiving it. But I wanted to share that just because it's a significant article in the sense that it really does reflect, at least an important dimension of this coming together, this joining. So earlier this year, a number of you here were involved in it. Jackie was at this, and Michael Barham, my wife Tina, and Russell, Ed. We had a retreat in Benicia. We just rented an Airbnb, and 19 of us came together, and it really was. I mean, it was a very special group because it really did cross cultural lines. We had Latino, African American, Native American, Asian, white in the group. We had a real spectrum of ecclesial traditions, like Mennonite and Lutheran and Reformed Presbyterian, Orthodox. It was a real wonderful mix. And then we had some professional theologians, pastors, and lay leaders and students in this group. And so it was an amazing mixture. It really did capture what we want the new college to look like, right? But we gathered to really come together and look, Marilyn was there too, to look at the Barmen Declaration. What did it mean for the confessing church in 1930s Germany to resist, the rise of fascism and during the, I'm sure most of you have read it, right? But it's completely Christ-centered, gospel-centered it was a document of resistance. It was a document of taking a stand against what was, this competing allegiance. So anyway, that's just to say that we gathered and looked at the Barmen through different lenses, different angles. Michael Barron did a wonderful job taking us in the Sermon on the Mount in light of the Barmen and in light of the situation in that day. And what does it mean to be a community? That community of resistance, right? Anyway, so we did that, and so this coming issue that's coming out very soon, the focus is going to be on the Barmen Declaration, and you're going to be able to read some writings from people that were part of that Barmen retreat. And I wanted to share that just because that's a picture of what this relationship is going to look like, where we have this community of co-learning, journeying together, wrestling with stuff, looking at the culture, looking at the politics and the technological transformation of human community that's happening. We're going to take a look at these things together, right? And then we'll have a chance to write about them and to put them into words that could be shared. And so I just wanted to share that. I really want to encourage you to. Is it okay if I just quickly take the two?
Just want to ask
Yeah.
one question.
Yeah. So this even these pictures here are kind of fun. So that top picture was a spontaneous New College event where, and it's really wild. It didn't surprise me a bit, but we just in a short order, it was kind of like, would anyone like to come together and just talk about, what can we learn from the Inklings for the church today? Like, how can the church learn from the Inklings in terms of how they gathered, why they gathered, how they conversed, how they transformed one another as they met? So that was that conversation. And then below that was a conversation took place in Redwood City, but it was a conversation about how is our notions and our understandings and experiences of Christian spirituality challenged if we really make an effort to look at it through a non-Western lens. And then this one over here was kind of a dialogue with history, really looking, so that's Nikki, she's the executive director of Evangelicals for Social Action, now Christians for Social Action. I don't know if you know Al Tizon, but he was the former president of ESA, but sort of like the question of Christ and poverty and classism, how has that conversation changed since Ron Sider's day in the 70s? So these are the kinds of conversations that we like to have, but it's all towards this goal of discerning gospel faithfulness together in the San Francisco Bay Area, and then we sort of elucidate this. We help the church discern and contextualize the way of Christ, cultivating theological imagination and spiritual friendship for our time. And again, that together word, spiritual friendship, like we really want to be a community, not just talking heads, that you can come or not come to, right? And really, in the face of nationalism, polarization, ecological crisis, teen suicide, loneliness, opioid addiction, disinformation, the list goes on. Like what does it mean to be faithful to the gospel today? So like as we're talking here, really leaning in to the culture and all of its dimensions. And lastly, I just wanted to say that our third space approach, we use that language of third space a lot. Not just that we're a third space between the church and the academy, but between congregational leaders and academics, minority and majority communities, builders, boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, historic and emergent ecclesial traditions, thinkers, pastors, prophets, and advocates. Like we need that kind of diversity. We need that Pauline body theology to be lived out in how we discern together gospel faithfulness. We have to get past the siloization, the compartmentalization that has so much characterized the church in America. And so this is what we're about.
I don't know where we are in time, Craig. Do you?
We have about 10 minutes left or so.
Okay, great. Well, so a couple of things. One is just a practical question. Think about what you do read. I think there are all kinds of statistics out there about readers and readership and how many Americans still read and so on. And I've talked to a lot of people who say, oh yeah, I get the New Yorker for the cartoons. Or, I get the New York Times, but all I really read is the headlines. I think it's really helpful, especially for an editorial board, to hear, what do you actually read? One thing I would hope to see in Radix is a robust page or two or screen or two devoted to letters to the editors, like right back, so that it really can be a conversation, not just figuratively, but that letters to the editors is a pretty interesting piece of lively magazines. And I think of Sojourners and Christian Century. Some of them are a little snarky, and that's okay, because you kind of get that the conversation has space to contain a lot of different kinds of responses. But I would like to just at least include in this conversation some real reckoning with, what do you actually read? If you actually get a magazine, what do you turn to? I mean, Tim, you were saying Radix was one of the few magazines I get that I actually read every page of, right?
The whole thing, yeah.
The whole thing. I mean, that says a lot for a magazine. We get some magazines, I don't think I read every page of any of them. So, yeah. What sections do you turn to? Crossword puzzles, whatever. Raymond?
I think as a lifelong reader, I have to admit with some shame that when I get the New Yorker, I tend to turn to the articles that have an audio attached to it. So I actually like the articles read to me. And I feel a bit embarrassed about that, but that's the actual practical reality of how I'm dealing with media these days.
It is a practical reality, and I know more and more people who say my reading life would be much impoverished if I couldn't resort to audiobooks. So to include an audio component makes a lot of sense. And just to refer back to the Reformed Journal, they have an audio component available if the writer is willing to add that to anything they publish. So I don't know how hard that is. I'm not the tech person, but I appreciate that word. Not
super difficult.
Yeah.
Not super difficult.
Not too hard. Thank you. Yeah, what else?
Yeah, because Matthew's also a great interviewer, so the audio articles are really great. One of the things, I'm Marianne White. I've been on the Radix board for a little bit. One of the things that I've enjoyed about the historical Radix, but also the online Radix, is there's always one article in there where you have to be ready to just dive in and just keep pedaling. And that's an important form. And then on the online, there are places where you can just take little sips. And I think both of those are things that I would like to always have.
When you say some of them are pieces where you really have to dive in and keep pedaling, are you talking about the length or the intellectually challenging pieces, or what do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, both. The people that are the densest writers tend to write the longest pieces.
Yeah.
And we tend to let them do it, but I think it's because they have something important to say.
Mm-hmm.
And to dumb it down or to, break it up, probably, well, if you break it up, people are only going to eat the little bits.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's sort of Craig was talking about when we were trying to sort of capture the whole archive of the history of Radix, but that the long form is one of the things that I was worried that we wouldn't be able to keep an audience for. But I think that it's put together in a way visually and just in the length and the spirit of the contributors,
Mm-hmm.
where you get little, you can sort of take the part that you can deal with.
I think of the long profile pieces, for instance, in the New Yorker. if you start on one of those, this is not bathroom reading. You know? You're going to be with it for a while. So, so to have sort of a shallow end and a deep end, and you can dive into the pool wherever you want, that's an interesting assignment for an editorial board to think, who are our readers? But it's really helpful to say who you are and what you would turn to immediately if you received this magazine once a month. So, this doesn't have to happen this moment, but I think it's the value of a gathering is to say, ante up, be in the conversation, because this is for all of us to foster community and help sustain our lives of faith. Kid, I was thinking about your mention of visual arts, and I also thought if there's an audio component, what about music?
Yeah, a little click to listen to music or hear an interview about the artwork that they're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. I think there's already links, aren't there, to interviews and whatnot. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, and Matthew already does some really great interviews, and they're all on there, and they're on the website too, because once it's posted forever. So
Yeah.
you can find them all on there.
Yeah,
Great.
that's great.
Yeah, Russell.
So I'm Russell. I'm on staff at College, and so I think about when I read, so much of it is not based here. It's New York City, it's East Coast, and elsewhere. And so why Radix? I think partly it's because I want to read stuff by people here, people who reference a setting I know, people who reference local history I know, people I've actually met, or whose work I actually encountered. So that's a big deal. And then, let's say interviews, when they are interviewing somebody on a national or international level, and that really interests me a little more. It's not just, some New York-based publication putting out something, talking about people I don't really know in a place I don't go to. So why Radix? I think they're kind of a local sense of place and people in that place, the journal of a particular community in a particular place.
Yeah.
I think Radix serves that well.
Thank you for mentioning that. I would like to just, on that note, maybe we need to end, but end with a little story. I was telling someone this recently. Years ago, I happened to be on the faculty of a school that was experimenting with a new alternative to the Western Civ course that people used to take their first year of college. And so they assembled a number of us in the humanities faculty and said, we're going to call this course From Athens to New York. You have to start with ancient Athens. You have to end with contemporary New York. You get to pick 4 other cities at particular points in time. And instead of a march through history, we're just going to look at the local history and the whole constellation of problems that people were facing and the forces that work and the dynamic of change that was happening right then, right there. So like 2 of my cities were London during the Great Plague and Florence during the Medicis. And one was Johannesburg, contemporary Johannesburg. It was so much fun. And we would start each section with, I just gather 15 facts about this city. If you don't know anything about it, here are some facts about Johannesburg. If that's, and look at each fact, that's true, then what? And what was so wonderful for me, and I think also for the students in teaching this course, was how local it was. And that history is local. And these are, nobody in my class lived in Johannesburg, but the idea of how things happen locally is a very different way of looking at the movements of history. Real people, real places and you begin to think concentrically. Moving out from there, you begin to understand the larger movements. So where is the church? One answer to that is always right here. So thank you for that. Want to finish up?
Yeah, we're going to be the NPR of Christian thinking, where we take you inside the Bay Area and around the world. So I want to just say that, well, first of all, thank you so much for coming. We have, I say this a lot, but we're big on vision, but the cash situation isn't so big. We need funding to carry on, to hire, to pay the Russells of the world and to improve the website. We have plans for we have grand plans for Radix, but we're thinking about a platform upgrade and change and just different technologies that'll help us do what we need to do. Certainly, if we wanted to go into print mode, that's gonna take money. We were given blessing by Sharon Gallagher's caretaking family to name a fund after her, and now the task is to fill that fund. And so I'm inviting you to be a part of that. And it could be a $50 monthly giving, $100. Maybe you can give more. But also, if you know people, we don't have a big, giant pharmaceutical company giving us $1 million to do this work. Not that we don't try, but I actually love that New College has been and probably always will be very much a grassroots supported organization. I love this book called The Revolution Will Not Be Funded, but it is going to be just support from folks that believe in what this work is all about. And so I just want to invite you to be a part of that. I know some of you already are, so I want to thank you for those of you who are. And again, I just want to stress that if you know people that, because I know the Radix loving community is way bigger than this room, right? But if you know people that would believe in this and believe in the future of this and would love to see it going, invite them to become a financial partner to this work. All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to close this. Please feel free to linger and hang out. There is more food in the back. Really would, please eat it up. Let me close this in prayer. Father in heaven, thank you so much for company. Thank you, Lord, that you not only do you not just call us to follow you alone, Father, but it is your very plan that we be reintegrated with one another, that we live independently, that we actually do live as though every part of the body needs each other. Lord, help us to live into that beautiful body image that the Apostle Paul has given to us. Thank you, Lord, that we are greater than the sum of our parts, but also it is the very hope that our fragmented world desperately needs, that we live in unity with one another, that we love one another, and that we marvel together in your grace and in the miracle of your life, death, resurrection, and ascension. Lord, help us to together ponder what that means for our complex world that we live in, with all of its myriad questions and challenges. And we think particularly about the fraught political situation that we're in and disturbing changes in who we are as an American polity, and what does it mean for the church to show up faithfully in a time like this. So we pray, Father, that you would be helping us, Lord, and bless this bringing together of Radix and New College. Lord, help us to be good stewards of this, not just us on staff, but each one here in this room. Lord, help us to be good stewards of the gift of Radix and New College and what it can mean for them to journey together and to co-labor together for your good purposes. So thank you. I want to thank you and praise you, Father, for this time that we've had and for the love and fellowship in this room. In Jesus' name, we thank you. Amen. All right. Enjoy each other.